Kingdom Kids, and welcome back to another story. Today our story is about Daniel in the lion's den. When King Darius became king, he appointed governors to help him rule. But Daniel was given authority over all those governors. Daniel was very hardworking, and Daniel prayed to God 3 times a day. But he didn't just pray in secret or in a corner in his room. He prayed at his window every day 3 times, morning, noon, and night. And the king was so impressed with Daniel that he put Daniel in charge of the whole kingdom. The governors that Daniel ruled over became very jealous of him, and they tried to figure out a way to catch Daniel or to make him guilty of something bad. And they started looking into Daniel's past and checking his behavior, but they couldn't find anything to accuse Daniel of. He did nothing wrong. He didn't lie, he didn't steal, he didn't fight, and this made them so mad that they needed to find a way to trap Daniel so that they could get rid of him. The governors knew that Daniel prayed 3 times a day in his window, and they knew that nothing they could do could really stop him from praying to his God. So they thought, if we really want to catch Daniel, we need to do something with the time he prays or how he prays, but we need to find something against him when it comes to him worshiping God. And then they tricked King Darius into signing a law that said that nobody was to pray to any god except to the king himself. And this law also said that if anyone was caught praying to anybody else besides the king, that they would be thrown into the lion's den. Daniel heard this law, and it didn't scare him. He still went to his window where everybody could see him and prayed to God. Those 3 governors, when they saw him, they were so glad, because here was the chance to finally get rid of Daniel. And so they ran to King Darius and said, King, we found someone who broke your law. And then he was like, who would do that? And they said, it's Daniel. And when these 3 governors came to him and told him that Daniel had broken this law, he was sad because he realized these guys were trying to trick him to get rid of someone who he trusted and he loved. The king had no choice but to arrest Daniel and have him put in the lion's den. Kingdom Kids, when the king put Daniel in the lion's den, he was so sad because he didn't really want to do that. And he looked down at Daniel and he said, may your God save you, because he knew that Daniel didn't serve the gods that he did. And he tossed and he turned that whole night, so worried about his dear friend. And early the next morning, the king woke up, and guess what the first thing is that he did? He ran to the lion's den. When he got there, the first thing he did was shout, Daniel, are you there? And to his surprise, a voice came back. Daniel replied that his God had protected him from the lions that night. The king then, so angry with his governors who had tricked him into making this law, had said that those 3 governors should be thrown into the lion's den instead. And Kingdom Kids, if you maybe think that those lions didn't eat Daniel because they weren't hungry, maybe the king fed them before he put Daniel in and that's why they didn't eat him. Oh no! When those 3 governors were thrown in, the Bible tells us that before they hit the ground, the lions had already slaughtered them. Darius was so happy that he issued a new law. And this law said that everybody should serve the one true God, the God that Daniel served. Yes, Kingdom Kids, if we serve God, no matter what happens, we can trust that God will always look after us, even if we are in the lion's den. Thank you for watching. See you again next time. Bye-bye.
2,000 years ago, on the eastern side of the Mediterranean Sea, a teacher named Jesus of Nazareth went up onto a hillside and addressed a large crowd.
It was a crowd of nobodies. Poor and sick people, their land occupied by the Roman Empire, who charged heavy taxes. This is a ragtag group.
And while they don't look like much, Jesus claimed that something surprising was starting with them.
So he opened his mouth and said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of the skies." The kingdom of the skies? What does that mean?
Well, Jesus uses this phrase to talk about a new kind of reality. From our perspective, we see a world of violence and corruption where might makes right. But for Jesus, there is a realm where generosity reigns, where there's justice and peace. It's a world where love is the final word.
And that reality might as well be up in the skies. It's beyond us.
Exactly. It's God's heavenly reality, which might seem far off. But Jesus was claiming that heaven was coming to earth, right here and now, beginning with these people.
That's unexpected.
And so is what he says next.
Blessed are those who grieve, for they will be comforted.
So this group that's at the bottom of society, they know all about loss and grief. But Jesus said something's coming that's going to turn sorrow into joy.
And then he said, "Blessed are the unimportant, for they will inherit the land."
And these people are not powerful or important, but just wait, Jesus says, because one day it will be you all who are ruling the world.
You know, it kind of sounds like Jesus is trying to start a revolution.
Well, kind of, but it's not a revolution for those who are hungry for power or influence. This is a movement of people who are going to serve because they long for healthy relationships between people and communities and nations.
Yeah, as Jesus puts it next. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy.
Just imagine it. A group of powerless nobodies ruling the world through generosity and forgiveness and justice. This is a Jesus-style revolution.
The next thing Jesus says is, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." And this one really raises the bar. To be part of this revolution, my heart needs to be so pure I could look directly at God.
Well, Jesus knows that all of our choices, even our good ones, are often driven by mixed motives. For Jesus, real peace is only possible through people who know that they need to be transformed if they're going to truly love God and others.
And this sounds wonderful, but it's a radical calling.
That's exactly right. In fact, Jesus goes on to explore just how radical it is.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God.
So God's new reality won't just happen by itself. It requires people who are willing to enter into the conflicts of others, urging and helping create a way towards peace.
But that way of life can be dangerous. And so Jesus says, "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of the skies."
Yeah, entering into conflicts and advocating for peace, that's not a comfortable way to live. And so Jesus calls people to this peacemaking revolution, and he names the high cost.
Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward in the skies is great, for they persecuted the prophets who were before you in the same way. What does that mean, the prophets before you?
Well, Jesus and this whole crowd are Israelites. And in their Hebrew scriptures, God promised that it would be through Israel that his kingdom would be restored over all the world.
But as the story goes, Israel becomes as corrupt and violent as everyone else, and they end up enslaved to oppressive nations.
But Israel's prophets stood up to these kingdoms and criticized their corruption. They said that one day God's heavenly kingdom would break in, starting with a small group of Israelites who would be willing to surrender everything over to God.
So Jesus wants this crowd to see that they're part of that legacy.
Yes, and that's why Jesus concludes this first block of teaching with 3 images from their scriptures.
The first is, "You are the salt of the land."
Salt is a mineral that preserves food for a long time. And in the Bible, salt is used as a symbol of God's long-lasting covenant with Israel. Jesus is saying that he and this ragtag group are the launch party of God's long-lasting ancient promises to renew the world.
And then Jesus says, You are the lights of the world, and a city on a hill cannot be hidden.
He's referring to the biblical image of God's light, his presence shining out from its dwelling place in the temple in Jerusalem, which was a city on a hill.
But these people, they aren't the rulers. I mean, they don't even live in Jerusalem.
And yet, surprise, Jesus says, you all are God's salt and city and light. You all are the blessed ones, the new Jerusalem that's going to display God's kingdom to all the world.
Peekaboo! Hey guys, it's me again, Douglas, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about something that you probably already know, but I know I forget this a lot, and I think a lot of us do. It's that God is always with you. Now, like I said, you probably hear that all the time. God is always with you, God is everywhere, that sort of thing. But it can be so easy to forget that God is with us. You know, my cousin, she had this baby, this really cute little girl. Her name is Abigail, and sometimes they come to visit my family, and she's getting bigger, and she likes to play games sometimes now, but the games that she plays are, just little baby games. Like, she loves peekaboo. And peekaboo, basically, you just cover your face, and then you say, peekaboo, and she thinks it is hilarious. She thinks it's the funniest thing. Every time I go, peekaboo, she laughs and laughs and laughs like it is the funniest thing she's ever seen. And it doesn't matter how many times I do it, she still thinks it's funny. And so I was asking my dad about that. I said, Dad, why does Abigail think peekaboo is so funny? And my dad is really smart, and sometimes he over-explains some things, but I thought this was pretty interesting, so I thought I'd share it with you guys today. So there's this thing that my dad was telling me about. He said that babies up to a certain point, they don't understand something called object permanence. Basically, it means that if they can't see something, then they don't think it's there. So like if you took one of their stuffed animals and you hid it under the table, they would think it was just gone. They wouldn't think you hid it under the table. And if you're playing peekaboo and you cover up your face, they think you're gone. They think you vanished like a ninja. Now, when you get a little bit older, you realize that if somebody puts a ball under a cup, it's still under the cup. The ball didn't disappear, unless somebody's doing some sort of sneaky magic trick or something. But even then, it's just an illusion. But even though we understand this concept, even though you and I know that if I cover my face, I'm still here, we still end up forgetting just like a little baby would, especially when it comes to God. Now, it's interesting with God because, well, you can't see God. But I think most of us, especially Christians, have felt God, right? There might be a time where you felt really close to God. God did something amazing for you, or you felt him with you, or maybe you heard him, or all these times where we feel the presence of God. I think it happens more often than we realize. And so we know that God is with us, and we've had these times where we've felt God with us, but then hard times come and we forget. When troubles come, we're like, where is God? I don't feel God. God isn't here. God doesn't love me. All these really bad, sad things that we think. And we see examples of this all the time in the Bible, where God has done something amazing for somebody, and then they turn right around and they're like, where's God? God has forgotten about me. Like the Israelites, when they were slaves in Egypt, God rescued them, and he sent these plagues on Pharaoh and on Egypt, and he did these amazing, wonderful miracles. He split the Red Sea, and they walked across on dry land. And yet when they get out into the wilderness, the Israelites are like, God has abandoned us. He let us out here to die. Like, well, no, of course he didn't do that. Why would he do that? Of course he loves you. Haven't you seen all these things that he's done? And we look at the Israelites and we think, wow, that's really silly for you to think that way. Or we look at, little baby Abigail and we think, wow, that's really silly of you to think that I'm gone when I cover my face. But we do that all the time. It's so easy for us to forget what God has done for us and to feel like he isn't here. So my challenge to you guys today is this. It's next time you feel the presence of God, next time you know God is there for you, next time you recognize that God is at work powerfully, I want you to really remember it. Maybe even write it down. Maybe you could get a little journal and you could write down the times when you feel the presence of God. And then in those times where you really can't feel him or you don't see him working, you can pull out that little journal. You can remember those times when you have felt the presence of God. Because just because you can't feel him doesn't mean he isn't there. Just because Abigail can't see me when I go like this doesn't mean I'm not right here. And someday Abigail is going to grow up and she's going to know and remember that I'm right here even if I cover my face. So let's all remember the times that we have felt the presence of God, so that even in the times when we feel like we might be alone or we feel like God isn't there, we will know that God is always with us.